was during the 1st century BC when some of the wealthiest citizens in the major cities of the newborn Roman Empire started seeing the first products coming from the Far East. During the following 2 centuries, a huge amount of goods such as the luxurious silk fabrics, new perfumes and spices would start arriving in the major cities of the empire, being the first large-scale contacts between the cultures from China and India, and those cultures present in the European continent. From today's point of view, having products from India or China could seem like no big deal, but for the Europeans of the 1st century, this was unbelievable since their knowledge about the Far East and their people was extremely limited. In some renowned documents of the 1st century CE, like the Natural History Encyclopedia from the Roman scholar Pliny the Elder, we can see how he even confuses Chinese products with Indian ones, becoming clear that at that time, no one in Europe had a clear image of those cultures. But why did these Eastern products start arriving in Rome at that time? Between the 1st century BC and the 2nd century AD, the Romans conquered the Anatolian Peninsula, Egypt, and Mesopotamia, establishing its eastern border next to the Parthian Empire around the year 117. With these new territorial acquisitions, the empire inherited the trade routes from the previous Hellenistic and Arab administrative powers, which connected to the eastern countries. This fact made possible to bring the trade of Asian products westwards to the vast Roman market, which occupied a large part of Europe, the African coast and the Mediterranean, as well as the mentioned territories in the Middle East, and had an estimated population of between 40 and 60 million people. During the 2 first centuries of the Common Era, the markets from Europe to China were successfully connected, creating the largest international system ever seen until that moment, through the recently expanded range of the Silk Roads. The cities in which most of this trade for Asian products took place were Palmyra, Dura, and Petra, which were located near the border between the Roman Empire and the Parthian Empire. But apart from those cities, the Romans managed to find an alternative way to obtain the coveted Asian luxuries: sea routes, which went from Egypt's Red Sea coast, through the Persian Gulf, to the western coast of the Indian subcontinent. These routes became so used and profitable that even in the China of the Han dynasty knew about them, as seen in the history of the later Han, which is one of the 24 histories of the Chinese ancient history. Around the mid-1st century, a Greek manual on navigation called Periplus of the Red Sea appeared. It was about a sailor named Hippalus, who claimed to know how to navigate using the monsoon winds, saying that it was possible to reach India and return back to the Red Sea in the time of just 1 year.
Singularly, in terms of travelers' navigation skills, Janet Abu-Lughod, in her book Before European Hegemony, explains how during the 13th century and previous decades, the Silk Roads were being crossed through maritime roads based on monsoon zones, which later developed into cultural domains. Indeed, the author separated zone by 3 circuits ruling the Indian Ocean: the westernmost circuit, the middle circuit, and the easternmost circuit. Meanwhile, besides sailing for the aim of trade, we may mention the Karakoram Highway, encompassing Pakistan through the Indus River until China, which during the Silk Roads epoch used also to be part as well as from the different routes surrounding India. The meaning of such union developed a wide range of effects, concluding on the stimulation of religions like Buddhism, religion which spread in part by the Kushan Empire with contacts along the Han Dynasty, and the Roman Empire was able to attach Indian Ocean maritime commerce to the Silk Roads by the Indus Valley, besides promoting more trade by granting wider security. Furthermore, such expansion entailed the proliferation for the maintenance and care of peaceful relations both by land and sea. As expressed by Abu-Lughod, the natural condition of the Indian Ocean was for several locally hegemonic powers to coexist. No single power ever exercised dominion over the entire system. Indeed, through their exchanges, ivory, spices, dyes, and semi-precious stones, it invigorated the promotion of art through music and architecture, mixing different styles and building techniques like the Taj Mahal's gardens, built during Mughal's empire, heavily influenced by Timur's gardens over Samarkand, located at Uzbekistan, built at the end of the 14th century. Additionally speaking, we may link both Taj Mahal and Timur's gardens to its Islam influences from the Persian Empire, involving the division of both gardens into 4 sectors as well as their closeness to numerical designs typical from Islam. Taj Mahal paving a floor of 8 chambers, representing the 8 heavens of Quran's cosmology, and a ninth central chamber symbolizing God, a construction made after the Silk Road ended. Nevertheless, even if the Silk Road ended in 1453, its exchange of cultural influences prevailed through several more years over the different countries composing it. Moreover, in terms of music and instruments, we could point out the expansion of India's symbols and the Sheng from China, besides several points portraying the Silk Road journey, such as Li Po's poem about Chinese boats sailing to Baghdad. Likewise, besides cultural exchange, it also emerged a sense of tolerance and justice among several territories, as Ramzan Bizarre and Olkan Jezilot explain in their article Tolerance and Peace on the Silk Road, an Asian Perspective. Various Turkish states maintained courts of law presided over judges responsible for reaching fair decisions in disputes without discriminating on grounds of race, religion, sect, or language. Therefore, such trade, involving both cooperation as well as an emergence of sympathy among the travelers, to reduce the distance of our differences as human beings.
The Silk Road began in China, which is one of the most meaningful regions in the history of China, both as the capital of several ruling dynasties and as a market and trade center. At certain times during their long history, trades could travel freely along those routes, whereas at others, travel was difficult, dangerous, or prohibited, according to the United Nations. Genghis Khan and his Mongol army rose to power at the end of the 12th century, at a moment when few opposing rulers could put up much resistance to them. The vast Mongol empire he created stretched up from China to Europe, across which the Silk Road functioned as an efficient line of communication as well as trade. The routes were particularly safe from raiders or aggressive tribes in this period, and great expeditions such as the famous journey of Marco Polo in the late 13th century became possible. According to popular belief, the routes were one of the main factors that contributed to the spread of the Black Death pandemic in Europe during the 14th century. Luckily, the spread of the Black Plague was not the only thing that got exported from China's trade route. Other much more beneficial goods were also transported, although the most precious export remained the silk. It was the most luxurious fabric that existed at the time and was light and therefore easy to pack. During the Han Dynasty era, the Han had a monopoly of the silk market. Hence, they had full control of the most valuable good that was transported on the Silk Road. For this reason, only the richest and powerful people could afford to pay such huge sums of gold to obtain the translucent, colorful silk fabric. Another good that was highly requested and exported from China was porcelain trade. The first porcelain pieces were produced in massive quantities and exported during the Han dynasties and were highly prized on the West. If we skip to imported products, it must be known that one of the earliest goods to be imported was a semi-precious stone named jade and was highly requested. In addition, horses were basic need for empires. People started demanding greater horses in order to use during combats as a result of local breeds being considered inadequate for the purpose of war. Other many valued imports were camels, which were exported from Central Asia and were very much appreciated by the Han and Tang empires. Not only material and indivisible goods were exchanged, science and inventions also began to spread. Particularly, the technology used to fabricate silk, paper, stained glass, books, gunpowder, and gun production were crucial innovations that spread to the West. The procedure used to make paper arrived in Samarkand in the 8th century, and by the 13th century, the special technology in order to create paper arrived to Europe through Baghdad and made possible the Renaissance of Europe, science and culture. When it comes to exchange of religions and philosophies, since the 1st and 2nd century Christian era, religions such as Buddhism and Islam were brought by merchants rather than by preachers and gained serious amount of followings in the Eastern empires. In addition, diplomacy was also present. The routes that formed the Silk Road were able to bloom because of peace treaties such as Pax Mongolica, which benefited the promotion of stability and peace all over those territories during a time when the Mongolians were very intense. Thanks to the protection that guaranteed these treaties, the trading routes were safe from threats. As a consequence, figures such as Jean de Plancarpin, Marco Polo, or Ibn Battuta would proceed to be leaders of legendary expeditions. This ultimately led to important cultural exchanges that turned into a piece of our reciprocal cultural patrimony of the Silk Roads. Today, there are over 40 countries along the history, land, and maritime Silk Roads, all still bearing witnesses to the impact of these routes on their culture, traditions, and costumes.